Costco and Target have discovered that the fastest way through a city zoning board is to build the zoning board's own housing crisis solution directly above the checkout lanes. Lambert Woollingham here, and it is Sunday, July 12th, 2026, a date that includes a downtown Austin power outage, a bond auction that pushed the 30-year Treasury yield past 5%, and Senator Lindsey Graham's death, all filed within the same news cycle. The Daily Shear also has Iran shutting down the Strait of Hormuz after a fresh round of American strikes, the Department of Justice subpoenaing New York Times reporters over an Air Force One story, and a private equity fund out of Austin closing at $1.3 billion. Local news today is mostly about who pays for infrastructure and who just gets to watch it happen. A downtown blackout, a county budget held together with savings, and two very large real estate deals closing while everyone else argues about the thermostat. Austin Energy has scheduled an overnight power outage for downtown residents in the middle of July, timed for grid upgrades the utility says cannot wait until cooler weather. The blackout will leave apartments and businesses without air conditioning or refrigeration for hours after sundown, which is forcing some residents to book a hotel room just to sleep through their own neighborhood's maintenance schedule. Utility officials call this the responsible alternative to an uncontrolled failure later in the season, which is true, and also the kind of logic that always sounds better from an office with air conditioning. Bexar County has avoided a property tax increase for the coming fiscal year, not through spending cuts, but by draining its reserve fund to cover the gap. Neighbouring taxing entities are raising their own rates to keep pace with inflation, while county commissioners spent down savings instead, a move fiscal analysts already warn cannot be repeated indefinitely. The county gets a flat tax bill this year, and an unresolved argument about next year's. Austin private equity firm Serent Capital closed a $1.3 billion fund this week, oversubscribed, pushing its total assets under management past $7 billion. The firm plans to spend it acquiring founder-led software companies in hospitality and legal practice management, the sort of unglamorous, recurring revenue businesses that do not require anyone to believe in anything in particular. It is one more data point in Austin's slow drift from a city that built startups into a city that files paperwork on them. Dallas Love Field has detailed a $2.5 billion expansion meant to push 6 million more passengers a year through the airport without adding a single new gate. The plan leans on faster baggage handling, bigger lounges, and tighter runway turnaround, a bet that efficiency can substitute for square footage. Southwest Airlines and the city both stand to profit once construction wraps. On a timeline, the aviation director himself puts years out, leaving travelers to enjoy the current interim version of efficiency, which is mostly cones. Brandywine Realty Trust sold its 405 Colorado office tower downtown for $151 million, a 206,000 square foot data point in a commercial real estate market that has spent a year guessing at its own value. The sale is part of a broader retreat by the trust, which has been shedding properties rather than waiting out a leasing recovery that has not arrived. The new owners inherit a glass tower and the same tenant retention problem everyone else downtown is already losing. The numbers get bigger from here. Record oil output, a bond auction the size of a small country's annual budget, and a housing market where nobody involved wants to move first. American crude production hit 21.1 million barrels a day in 2025, outpacing Saudi Arabia by 42% and Russia by 37%, while fossil fuels still supply 86% of the world's energy, despite several decades of stated intentions otherwise. The Permian Basin alone is doing more to insulate the American economy from a shipping lane crisis than any diplomatic effort currently underway. The transition away from oil remains, for the moment, mostly a calendar entry. The Treasury sold $743 billion in notes and bonds this week, adding $70 billion in new debt and pushing the 30-year yield to 5.06%, as investors priced in inflation and a Federal Reserve still reluctant to tighten anything. This is reporting via Wolf Street, where Wolf Richter's read on the bond market is generally worth having. And the plain version of it is that markets will still buy American debt. They simply charge more for the privilege now. That premium eventually drains out of everything else. Mortgages, business loans, the theoretical difference between borrowing money and admitting you cannot pay for what you already bought. The auction sold out anyway. The supply of existing single-family homes has hit a 10-year high, and condos a 14-year high as the usual spring selling season collapsed under mortgage rates near 6.49% and asking prices that finally outran the median buyer. Sellers are not lowering prices, buyers are not raising offers, and the standoff is producing exactly the inventory pile you would expect from two sides waiting for the other to blink first. Nobody is buying. Nobody is selling. Everyone involved insists this is a strategy. Oregon's Attorney General has dropped his legal challenge to the Paramount and Warner Brothers Discovery merger after Paramount simply refused to hand over the documents his office subpoenaed. Rather than escalate into a prolonged court fight, the state folded and the merger proceeds without the state-level antitrust review Attorney General Dan Rayfield's office had been seeking. A spokesperson called the outcome frustrating, which is one word for watching a media conglomerate outlast a state regulator by declining to answer the phone. Costco and Target are now building affordable housing on top of new stores, a workaround that turns city zoning boards from obstacles into partners grateful for the housing credit. The arrangement lets both chains secure prime urban real estate they could not get through conventional permitting, while satisfying municipal quotas for low-income units somebody else would otherwise have to build. It is being described as an innovative retail strategy. It is also, structurally, a warehouse with an apartment complex stacked on top of it as a permitting fee, and then the news that has nothing to do with spreadsheets. A senator's death, a subpoena delivered to a reporter's front door, and a war that, this week, stopped pretending to be paused. Senator Lindsey Graham has died at 71 after a brief and sudden illness, ending a 23-year Senate career that took him from hawkish interventionist to one of President Trump's most consistent legislative allies. He returned from a diplomatic meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Kyiv only days before his death. South Carolina's governor must now appoint a successor, and the Senate Judiciary Committee loses a senior member with the November election already underway. Graham was in the middle of campaigning for a fifth term. The United States Department of Justice has issued grand jury subpoenas to multiple New York Times reporters over their investigation into security concerns with the new Air Force One, the Boeing jet gifted to the administration by Qatar's royal family. Federal agents delivered the subpoenas in person at the reporters' homes, ordering them to testify before a grand jury in Manhattan. Kash Patel, the Federal Bureau of Investigation director, reportedly spent 8 hours at the White House coordinating the effort before the subpoenas went out, which is a remarkable amount of scheduling for a story about a plane. The paper's lawyers have called it a direct assault on press freedom. California Representative Ro Khanna was held for 90 minutes by armed Israeli settlers while touring a Palestinian village in the occupied West Bank, unable to leave until Israeli forces arrived, and, according to Kana, sided with the settlers before eventually letting his delegation go. The settlers were carrying American-made weapons, a detail that gives the whole encounter a strange domestic footnote. Kana has criticised the occupation from the floor of Congress for years. This time he experienced its checkpoint procedure directly, on foot, with no vote available to him. The department has also sued Maryland to dismantle its Community Trust Act, arguing the state's sanctuary policy illegally blocks local police from coordinating with federal immigration agents. Maryland officials say the law exists so immigrant communities can call the police or visit a hospital without triggering a deportation referral, which the federal government considers less a public safety measure than an obstruction of one. The case sets up another round of the same fight the administration has run against sanctuary jurisdictions all year, this time over what a local police department is actually for. The ceasefire in the Persian Gulf did not last. American forces have now struck Iranian targets 3 times in a single week, this latest round in retaliation for an Iranian attack on a Cyprus-flagged container ship. Iran responded by declaring the Strait of Hormuz closed to international shipping and firing missiles and drones at American and allied positions across Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, Jordan, and the United Arab Emirates. What had briefly been described as a truce is, by any plain reading, an active war moving through one of the most important oil corridors on the planet. The detail I keep returning to is the Costco apartment. Somewhere in a city zoning file right now, a family is going to live directly above a warehouse of 48 count paper towel bundles, which means their smoke detector chirps at wholesale volume and their elevator opens out next to the rotisserie chickens. Give it a few years and the leasing office will require a membership card to access the mailroom, with a premium tier for early entry to the parking garage before the crowds arrive. Eventually, somebody signs a 30-year mortgage with an executive membership bundled in, and the amenities package includes a complimentary sheet cake at lease renewal. I would like to be very clear that I do not know how to feel about this, and I have decided not to find out. That is the day. A war that restarted, a senator who did not survive the week, and a retail chain that would like to sell you a mattress and a parking spot on the same receipt. Nothing in this issue got better by being explained. Lambert Woollingham still deciding whether to renew his own membership before the rotisserie chicken line gets any longer. The day has been shorn until tomorrow.